Welcome to our next to the last class, and let's just get ourselves up here a little bit, and then I want to play a little something by ear for you. That's not what I wanted. Alrighty. So that's not what I'm going to do, but goodbye. We'll come back to things. Okay, so here we go. PowerPoint. So is anybody finding their way to the PowerPoints? And I'm sorry to tell you that I just realized last night that I hadn't put up week number 4. So there it is this morning, and week number 5 is today, and that's also up there. So let's just get this rolling a little bit here. And today, being October 21st, there we go. So, welcome to week 5. Here we are, October 21st. So today we're going to talk, we talk a little bit about something each week that is, you don't have to remember, you don't even have to understand it, but if you even know it's there, it's worth just getting exposed, I hope, and to feel like you have a little bit of a grasp of how music works. And so today, in a way, is going to be a little bit of a piano lesson or a music lesson from both Barbie and me, just a few pointers that we think will be of interest to you. So today's live music will include, we're going to revisit the harp etude because that's sort of a way for you to relate to new information. And we're going to talk about phrasing, which we've done with the anacrusic and crusic and metacrusic flow. And we haven't talked a lot about the harmonic language. So it's so rich and so deep in that piece that I want to explore that with you in a way that I would if I were teaching a piano student to make more of what they came in with. And there's always more. And so we proceed through the piano lessons. And layering is something we haven't talked about yet per se, but you hear it and you feel it. And conveying musical meaning. Every note matters. Every note has meaning. Every note is going to some other note in the music, or there wouldn't be flow. And if you have layers, then this layer might be softer than the melodic layer, but the harmony might become incredibly interesting, and then you bring out other notes, and so there's all kinds of different things that are involved. Organic means music that grows, or anything that grows out of itself. A tree is organic. It's an organism. We're organisms. We grow. And so organic in music means music that connects to the next thing. And it can connect to silence. And silence is part of music. My mother said, why don't you try the silence part a little bit in this home? So, and Barbie's going to play for you and talk with you a little bit about Mendelssohn's wonderful serious variations, the variations sérieuses. So that'll be lovely. And then we're going to look at a piece that is quite lovely, and it's on the other end of Debussy's Clair de Lune, because that means the light of the moon. And so here you see Clair de Lune, but this is a prelude where it's imaginary that there are people on a balcony somewhere in a terrace, you might say, and they are observing the moon. And I said it, we had a church concert with a wonderful grand piano that was gifted to the church, Holy Spirit Episcopal. So we had a series of 4 concerts there, 4 Wednesday evenings. And I said, as I learned about this piece and learned it and then studied what was going on in the music, it occurred to me that it's really somehow about the ancient quality of this universe, that the moon is not just something we gaze at, it's something that's Genesis, you know, it's right there from time immemorial. So thank you all for your continuing things. So before we move on, you realize that we don't have dahlias this week. So, but there are other things, but this is just kind of, just a week ago we had them, right? And now we've had our autumn, and it has to happen, and then the tubers have to get dug up or they would be mush in the spring, and they get stored over the winter. So it's a labor intensive, but think of the beauty that we all get out of these great flowers. So what a difference a freeze makes, right? So here's actually a year ago with our wonderful former student and friend in the background playing on the piano after the class. And there's last year's bouquet. And this is just a sample of last year's garden the day after. The autumn freeze. It looks like Halloween, right? And that's coming up too. So maybe we could have a Halloween bouquet next week. So I'm going to play a little something for you by ear, and all the things you are. And I teased, my mom was great, but I teased that she would say, and think of all the things you're not, Stephen. You know, get to it. Anyway, so. So what's the name of that? Again, all the things you are. And so this beautiful song, Jerome Kern, is that right? Who knows? I think that's who it is. So there's this great harmony. Exotic harmonies, and this is that one you guys keep telling me is so sour. Yeah. But when you hear it in context, and then, so nothing could be prettier than that. Extended harmony. It's called extended harmonies, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. And it's not that you have to know the names of things or anything, but if you have a sense that dissonance and stretched harmonies and unusual and exotic harmonies make the music deeper, then it can convey even the most special part of the song. And I think that on that day, I'll know that day, I'll know that moment divine. Know that moment divine when all the that song by how it sounds, right? Great song. All the things you are will be mine. I'll know that moment divine, and that's divine right there, is that divine harmony. Even that one is an ugly harmony that sounds so pretty. So, there's the divine flowers, and there's that moment after the divine, after the freeze. So moving on, thank you for listening to that, but isn't that beautiful harmony?
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So, now that you're convinced, we'll get to think about some things together. So, I want to go back to this great piece, the Aeolian harp. Maybe next week I'll play it in its complete, because you'll know everything about it. And I hope you never get caught in the idea that there's so many things to know about music that the more you know, the less you like it, because now I'm confused. What do I listen for? I hope it's not that. I hope it's that, oh, I have a hint of, oh, listen to that beautiful phrasing, listen to that beautiful layering. And we've been talking about, last week we talked about time, space, and energy, that, believe it or not, every beat has time, space, and energy. and I asked you, and let's just do a few just beats. Here's the beat, and the amount of time between each little moment in the conducting world is called the ictus of the boom, the moment. There's a moment where the beat actually occurs, and everybody in the orchestra can feel it, or the choir, or the band. Or even in a piano lesson, we can conduct, and the kids can conduct their own phrasing, and then when they conduct it and then they sit back down to play it, they play it better because they've done it physically. So if your beat goes tick, metronomes on the internet or the web should never just go tick, tick. They should go tick, tick, tick. So the moment of the beat itself is where you hit the drum head. I was telling you last week we did it on bongo drums at Oberlin. And then you feel there's actually a flick where you send the beat. Does that make sense? You're not just lifting your hand and drawing a circle. Your arm and your hand and your percussion part of your body that could imagine playing the timpani or the snare drums or the xylophone or the marimba or the gong, or the bells with all the tune notes, or the chimes, all those things are percussion. And every instrument emulates the human voice, so even those guys don't want to go thunk, thunk, they go sound, sound, sound. So that's the time of the beat. And the space is, in a way, how much energy you put into that, so that there might be more space or a smaller space, but the time might be the same. Does that make sense? So different energies will send different sized billowing, if you will. So when you have, and maybe you guys can do this on your own hand while I play. So then you're gonna jump, 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 or you can do it clapping even. We did that last week. So the moment divine. And there's that unusual harmony right there. But it's on its way to the next thing. Or am I on here or not? There we are, sorry. Should I repeat everything from the beginning? No. You can sort of hear me anyway, right? Okay. So those, Barbie, you can point. You have been appointed to your new job, and it's the little red button there. So you can point where I am up there. Or she can point to me in case you don't know where, in case I don't know where I am. Okay. Line. And this is different. Barbie is pointing right now. I'm bringing out those green highlighted ones. Right. So then you have counter melody, a melody on the top, and you have, and they're going opposite directions. And so. This is like, I don't know, chocolate syrup on your ice cream. And then this is caramel. And this is strawberry. And I don't have the rest of it up there for you, but it's not just, it's harmonic language. Does that make sense? Even if you don't know what chords you're listening to, that it's... And this leads into this. So it isn't just finish that harmony, play that harmony. So does that make sense? That's organic music that grows out of itself. And it's the greatest thing. And so I think the richest music like this since 1836, when this was composed, is like 200 years now, right? Basically coming up on it. And it's here forever. Mrs. Ott, this great piano teacher who studied at Juilliard but was born in Hope, Washington, up south of Spokane. The town is so small now that it's one electric pole that says entering Hope, and then on the other side it says entering Hope. So whichever way you are driving on the road, it says entering Hope, but there's nothing there. But her dad used to have the farm implements store there, so she was a great lady, National Teacher of the Year, and she was 12, and she started teaching piano lessons because she knew more than anybody else in the neighborhood, so she became the teacher, and all the kids around the neighborhood. I did that when I was 12 or 13 in South Dakota. You know, the little cousins or the little whatever's, neighbors and friends from church and school wanted to learn something about piano, and then they found out they had to practice, and then they weren't so sure that they wanted to know that much. But but they did it, and anyway, she was the teacher, and then she said that when she got off to college, she just had all kinds of incredible experiences. And what was I even going to tell you? I don't remember. I started thinking about Margie May and entering and leaving Hope all at the same time. How do you enter a town and leave it in the same moment? But anyway, I'll come back to the thought. But she was a great lady, and here's a great Margaret Ott story. You've got to know this because it just inspired me for my life. And I said, Margie May, I have never heard you say a bad word about anybody. If there's anybody that deserves a bad word, you just ignored them. And she just was kind to every student. And then we were doing a little interview together because I knew that, she was older than I was, and she is gone now, but I just wanted some of her wisdom. So we were listening and thinking together, and I said, that's just the greatest thing. It's such a model of kindness. And she said, well, you know what? She said, when I was about 9, my daddy taught me something. And I said, well, tell me what? And she said, well, I used to love the silent movies, but I especially loved the vaudeville. You guys all know what that was, the juggling act before, and I can still hear her saying it. She said, what's that thing that, that when people toss balls up in the air? And I said, you mean juggling? Yes, juggling, that's the word. And so she said this guy was, vaudeville was coming to an end, and it was like the Wilma Theater used to be, right, vaudeville, their show before or after the movie, or I suppose before. And she was watching this guy, and she said, vaudeville was at an end, and so was this guy. He didn't have anything else to do, and the balls were falling all over the floor. And so she was sitting next to her daddy, and then her mama was on the other side, so dad was sort of at the anchor in the middle of the three, and she was an only child. And so the audience, clapped after he sort of stumbled through his little act, and she wasn't clapping. She was 9, And she said, Daddy said, Margie May, you're not clapping. Well, Daddy, he didn't do very well. And, I guess she thought that was the appropriate response. And then Daddy said, he did the best he could, didn't he? Oh. And she said, so you clap. And so no matter what, I never saw her without a smile. For every kid that went up to play a recital, they could fall apart miserably, and she was there smiling and just cheering them on. So please cheer me on. No. That's the lesson, okay. Anyway, isn't that something? It's true, I mean, I'm going through a whole bunch of reunions now where kids are coming back to see me. I don't know why, but 40 years later, a student, that kid that you met a couple of weeks ago, he popped back into my life, and you find out that you made a difference in their life. But music made the difference, right? And then this kid, became somebody. Anyway, so that is organic unity. Now what I want you to know is deeper. So here's what happens in a piano lesson. Maybe they have to do that note first or later, because if you can't go, you can't just lunge at the next note. So you sort of adjust here's the melody, that first note, and then the left end sort of becomes a graze note. And then this is what is so fascinating. And you notice how those notes are little. They're written little, right? Chopin would have done that, just tiny, tiny notes, but so meaningful. So in the right hand you have, I'm going to show it, Barbie's going to point. The bottom note that she's pointing to right there is the same note as the top note. It isn't always, but there's sort of a reinforcement underneath. And so you can feel it and see it and hear it. Go back to the beginning. Then these 5 notes. Let us go to there. 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 So there's a moment at the bottom. It isn't just the bottom note. So you start layering. And so the students are thrilled, and I hope, and inspired, even more, I hope. Then they start, because it's possible that that note's going to poke out, the second little note, or the first little note, if Barbie points to it. Because the fingers just want to play everything the same. So you start differentiating. And then as they hear it, the students, so they can use the top note, the melody note, in measure 1, the first beat. Then you can kind of use that as a hinge. So that, can you see a little bit my hand? I would, instead of poke, it's play, melody, and then hinge to make this next note controlled. So you have 6 different volumes, if you will, 6 different loudnesses and softness. Soft, slightly similar, but maybe a little louder because it's on its way. And then you fade away. So within that accompaniment, we've talked for weeks now about how all those melody notes, the top big notes, are anacrusic on, and there's the crux, and then it subsides. But within that, there's all this next stuff that's even more important, because if it's in the way, it kills the music. So these notes are anacrusic to this other crux, and then you fade away from there. You subside. And then what's going on in the left hand is similar but different. And what if he'd gone to if he'd played both E flats at the same time, that's the notes I'm playing are E flats, if I could have an overhead projector on the piano. But this is harmony. Here's the harmony. Melody, bass, soprano, bass, alto, tenor. Barbie's going to talk about that in the Mendelssohn. Now everything's subsiding, but within that subsiding, there are all these other shapes. And so the goal in the piano lesson and the music kids learning to become musicians and not just good piano players and clarinet players and good singers is to, and they'll feel it, but now they start to achieve it. And so they, And you're probably not going to play these equal. The left hand's going to be softer than the right hand. And that's when they say, maybe I'll just major in something else. Or they become fascinated and their ear starts to demand or desire or aspire or inspire to that level of detail. So the fade away is so important. Here we fade away. And that helps the melody. Instead of, that would just confuse. Does that make sense? So here you start to layer. And that's, of course, you thinking of the hens you had in the farm. Yes, she's a layer. Well, that's about eggs and breakfast. But this is about music. And later, and here I have a little couple enlarged musical examples. And then we're going to keep moving on. I got to keep track of our time as well. Yeah, thank you. I actually have it here, 9:28. You exaggerate. She lied. So there's what we're talking about right now in the first measures. But later, you get this other great harmony, and Barbie can find it. She can point to it on that, but we looked at it early. So now the left hand. And then this is where the sun sort of peeks through the clouds. And then maybe it's getting in that rosy part of the evening. And that leads to this, where the moon's coming up over the horizon or something. And we're in a totally different key. We're in A major. It has nothing to do with A flat major. Kids start doing it, and then they say, I did all of that? And I said, yes, because your soul wanted it, and because your ear wanted it, and your fingers started to talk instead of just play the piano. So then we're developing artists. So the young man you met a couple weeks ago, I said, well, you were already playing pretty well when you graduated, and he says, yes, but you taught me to play expressively. So even that piece, he started from zero, in college here. And so he's playing, and what was it? So he didn't go, he didn't just plunk, And I'm not saying it's bad, because everything leads to something. So if you're plunking at the moment, that's great. Just plunk away. Enjoy it, love it. And then, start to think about, oh, yeah. I can still remember when I was playing a little sonatina, and there was this sort of wrong note. Maybe it was a Mendelssohn song without words. And oh my gosh, what is that? That's got to be a wrong note. And then I learned that it was going to a right note. And I thought, oh, well, there's more to this than I thought. So it becomes fascinating. And so then practicing is not drudgery, it's sort of your playroom or sandbox, let's call it. Not litter box, hopefully. That's another thing. Okay, so, alrighty, so we're going to move on. And that isn't everything, but you get a little bit the idea. There's layering and there's phrasing. Yeah, any questions on that? Or any thoughts? Yeah, please. Yeah, totally. You realize that the harpsichord couldn't do all those shapes, right? But Bach wrote it into the music nonetheless. So when you hear on a harpsichord, which we actually have here, it was backstage, it still is, right? They would do it in different ways. So instead of, I'm trying to play all the notes the same volume. So he would say, hold these. And maybe then you can also hold these. And you could take a little time. And the music went up and down as well as laterally, kind of. It's what I call three-dimensional music or three-dimensional playing. It's a really great question because you'd think that there must not be any music in the harpsichord. But Bach, when he wanted sort of more intense, he'd write it to go up there, and when he wanted it to resolve quieter, higher, lower, or intense harmonies. So. But then you think about the orchestras of the day, they could get louder and softer, and the flutes and the Baroque trumpets could get louder and softer. And so it wasn't that you shouldn't get louder and softer, it's just that the harpsichord did it a different way. Or he'd... Those notes would all sound the same volume, but then he'd say, hang on to this one. So it's kind of like what I showed you earlier on these high notes and then the little notes. They're in the music. Does that make sense a little bit? And there are all kinds of that holding or... But they wouldn't pop the note, they would... Because if you pop it, it's going to interrupt like a sudden jolt of the brake when you realize the light turned red and you hadn't stopped yet. And you slam on the brakes. So there's all kinds of ways you adapt. That's a very good question. And there was another thought, yeah. Oh, okay, great. Okay, well, so hopefully that makes some sense. Any other quick thoughts on that? So this is just interest that you can get, because it is up online now, this set of PowerPoints. So go ahead, this is, Chopin was becoming very famous, but he didn't like playing in public. He loved playing for his friends in the salons of Paris, where he lived, because he could never go back to Poland once Russia had moved in and kind of confiscated Poland, if you will, and things like that happen on this earth, as we know, and I hope they resolve. And here's the complete painting from which that portrait was derived, because there really weren't a lot of oil paintings of people back in the day, but he was doing all right. And now we're going to go on to Barbie, and she's going to share some thoughts, and I'll give you a microphone if we have it. Okay, thank you so much, and I'll point out things. And I have, as she's moving up to the piano, you are seeing. Okay, so this is a great piece. Mendelssohn was a colleague, if you will, contemporary, let's say, of Chopin. Mendelssohn having been born in 1809 and Chopin in 1810. Did they know each other? Yes. Once everybody was sort of convening in Paris. So Franz Liszt was in Paris, Robert Schumann stopped through Paris, Mendelssohn was on a trip from England through Paris to Italy and all kind of things. So they all got to know each other because they were, in effect, the musically elite. That doesn't mean snobs, it just means they had great talent. And they met other poets, and they met writers, and they met artists, painters, the arts. Yeah, go ahead, Barbie.
Okay, this piece is called Variations Sérieuses by Felix Mendelssohn, and it was written in 1841. The theme, it's a theme and variations, and the theme is presented in four-part harmony. So those of you who might have sung in a chorus know that you have soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. And the first note in the soprano is A, the alto is F, the tenor is D, and the bass is D. So that's a simple D minor chord. So what I would like you to listen for is the four parts of the theme. And then in each of the variations, he develops one of the parts. For instance, in the first variation, he develops the alto part. And then he adds a lower bass note so that you have not just one D, you have a lower D as well. So the first two notes in the melody are like a sigh, like a, oh. And he repeats that idea. It's like a sigh, and that's just a half step away. So you have an A. And that idea goes through the whole thing. And I know that if you play them together, it's a clash. So after the Romantic period, when you get into Debussy, the Impressionists and the contemporary composers, they use that clash all the time. You hear it in modern music. So you hear it in this piece too, but only in the form of a melody, which has harmony underneath it. So listen for that sigh element to the melody of it. And so I would say just listen to each variation. You'll recognize the melody probably in each variation, but then you'll see how interesting and different all of the other parts that accompany the melody are. Okay.
So that we last year talked about this quite a bit in the class. Some of you were in that class, and we called it by its German name because it's commonly used throughout the music world. It's Seufzer. Seufzer is German for sighing. So you go sighing, sighing. And it's an emotional thing. It's not just a word. Seufzer means sighing. So, great. I'm going to shut off the microphones.
There was this famous pianist by the name of de Pachmann. Have you heard that name? You know him? And he was a great pianist, and somebody wanted to listen to him practice. So he went and stood outside the room where de Pachmann was practicing, and the only thing he was playing for hours was trying to match tones, like as the tone decays on the piano, to try to match it to the soft that would match it the best, to try to, I guess, improve his tone matching skills. I thought that was funny. That's the only thing he practiced.
I don't know if it was funny, but it was impressive. Wow. No, so Barbie's way more than a guest artist here. She's really my co-anchor. And so I'm not Johnny Carson, and she's Ed McMahon. Edwina. Anyway, we're a great team ever since she came back. So I really appreciate this. So any questions or thoughts at the moment? Yeah.
I was intrigued that in many themes and variations you hear, there's always a break between variation X and Y. Mm-hmm. And in this piece, there was only that one.
One break?
One break.
It's
everything else sort of flowed musically from one to the other.
That's very astute observation. It's true.
Maybe that's your organic flow, but it really, I think, made the power of the music even greater.
The name Serious Variations, right, is true. First of all, it's in D minor. Could you find Variation 10? I was going to ask you to show something there, because it's, and that, but also just the idea of the four-part writing, and also the Seufzer quality, the sigh, and something we haven't talked about exactly.
That's sort of like a triple entry, sort of. Yeah, see, because the tenor comes in. Now the alto comes in. It's three voices. Now the bass comes in. And then you have all four voices. So that's sort of like a fugue where they enter one voice at a time. You can tell how many voices there are by how many voices are entering in that music. Four-part harmony, basically.
Yeah, it's such beautiful music, and we haven't used this term, but the Seufzer in this case, in the very opening theme, maybe show that again, because we haven't talked about exactly what this is in music theory, let's call it, is that the resolution to the right note from the held over note, it's called a suspension, and that suspension, he could have written, like, just let me try it for a sec. So he could have written.
Right.
Because that's going to that note. So Barbie's going to show how that delaying the G sharp makes the musical tension. You hear it and feel it. Delayed resolution. It's like that little spat you have over whether the toast was too burned or too not cooked. So if you say, suspend it, and then resolve it, or so you delay the resolution, and that's called a suspension, and it's really, there's different ways that it gets executed in composition. But yeah, is that helpful to think about some of those things? So thank you so much, Barbie, again. It's really... Yeah. She's my Dear Margaret Ott, who claps no matter what. It's really no matter what is the big deal, really, because cheering everybody on is the greatest thing. And those kids, like I told you about my little brother, the piece was supposed to end here, and and that last little note didn't sound, and he's walking back he just couldn't stand it, so he goes back and he played the right note. And I could have just gone home because he was the hit of the whole concert. Anyway, yeah, precious, as they say. Anything else? I'd like to know a little bit, maybe next week we get a little time to just sort of reflect. Some of the things you maybe, I hope, are learning about even, that are valuable to you in some way. Is there anything that anybody's feeling today that, is there nothing nothing that you're learning or experiencing? I was impressed, applause to, was it you that told me last week you were going to take piano lessons again? It's terrific. That's wonderful. So congratulations on that for sure. So this you can listen to in your own time. This is the great pianist, Andras Schiff. I have a friend in New York who played for years. They've retired the quartet now called the Mendelssohn String Quartet. She was the cellist forever in that, Marcy Rosen. And when she goes into New York City, because she lives up in Englewood, New Jersey, bought a house up there after she played enough concerts to afford it. And this guy here, Andras Schiff, is her dear friend from Vienna. So when he's not in New York in his apartment, she gets to stay overnight in his apartment, or even if he's there. It's so nice to have such friends in New York City, right? I think I want to give him a call. $600 a night for a hotel room in New York. So these are things you're going to look up this is your enticement to go into your PowerPoints online. So here is the first impressionistic painting by Monet, and it's called Impression Sunrise, basically, the sun rising. And so it's just an impression, and it was called Impression. And therefore, a critic, it was first shown at a public exhibition. It wasn't called Impressionist yet, quite, but an Impressionist exhibit in 1 year or 2 years after it was painted. We don't know if it's 1872 or 1873, but Claude Monet painted this sort of casually reflection of what it might be like if you just put some brush strokes here and there in different colors, and it was just a whole new way of thinking of music. Thinking of art, which is music for the eyes in another way. And so this came to be called Impression, but it was meant sort of derogatorily. Does that make sense? Oh, what is that? What, after all these wonderful Rubens paintings and realistic paintings and very styled paintings, this was something new. But was it completely new? This is already 1839, so that was 1874, and this Turner painting is considered a precursor. So when we talk about impressionistic style or romantic style or 20th century styles or neoclassic or pre-classic and all of these different names, there's not one day where one door shut and the next door opened, right? And so everything is always in transition. So there are precursors to everything. And it wasn't that people were thinking, oh, let's imitate Turner's painting. It's just the way that things happen and new use of color, new use of paintbrushing, new use of subject material, all kinds of things. So here's Claude Debussy, and very fine composer. I think it was maybe last week we were talking about how he had cancer for about 8 years before he passed, and it was very uncomfortable because it was colon cancer, right? Horrible. Great pain, and just prevailed and kept writing music. So Impressionism, you can read about this in your own time at home more than, because I want to get to some other things here. And this you heard the first week, if this is working. Maybe it isn't this week, but we did Clair de Lune the first week. And now we're going to look a little bit at the idea of harmonies as they came through the French vernacular, if you will, how they used harmony. And not only they, because Bach already was using extended chords. So you have, in Bach, we just tried a little. And these chords are chords that pull to the next harmony. And this chord kind of edges toward this one, which leads us to that one. And this is Bach, way back 1722. And this is the resolution. And then this harmony, Debussy used it all the time, so it's not new. And then that goes there, and that one goes there. And this edgy one, nudgy one. So in that way that you asked that good question about how does Bach express it, well, sometimes it's the harmonic language. So now this chord seems to resolve to this. And this one is higher, and it goes to that one. But another secret message inside, you know, that movie about the secret ring, the kid wants with the box tops, so that the decoding ring or something like that. When you're decoding this, going to here, at the same time this goes here, this is pulling to this. And then that seems to go resolve to that, but at the same time that is edgy and it's heading to that, and that's heading to that, and that's the harmonic language, and that goes to there. And then that's an edgy kind of restless harmony, restive, and that's a temporary resolution. So you see it's overlapping things, and that's part of the organic unity, in this case in Bach. And so here's Debussy, the young man who was naughty. He was just a naughty student. He just would stay after theory class, and he would say, why do I have to go from here to here? I could go from here to here, and as I just have to think, he would just start exploring and saying, well, those chords don't have to go to the other usual chord. And so if I move on, this little picture here on your PowerPoint shows that if you played, here are in the orange, here are all the notes of a C major scale. Here's the C, the D is way up there, D, here, where's the E? Right there. Where's the F? The F is up there. So if you play all the notes of a scale in one moment, it's that. But if you play the notes spread out, every other one, and so I was doing those one at a time. So there's the C, and there's the E, and there's the G, and you're skipping every other note, and you're spreading it out. And so that's a very different sound from that. So it's more spacious, it's opening up. And so Debussy was playing things around like this is one of those chords like Bach's. It's like that harmony. So Debussy just opened up the possibility, said, I don't have to go to the usual place, I can go to another similar chord. So again, this isn't all the information because it takes a while for that to become knowledge, for example. But, and this, we've showed this before, that yellow chord right there with the little yellow arrow, Ravel, who was born a few years later than Debussy, but also French and impressionistic, that's the chord exactly. And so if you read music, you can go home and try it on your piano, but we're not studying that piece today. So I'm going to move on, and this is what we're looking at. And this is what your eye sees when you're learning the piece. And so you start learning it, and you say, and you see this, and you see this. And Barbie could have pointed to that, if she went. I'll do it one more time. Where is the little guy? Oh, the pointer. Isn't there a popular group called the Pointer Sisters? Well, here's my pointer sister. Her name is Barbie. Okay. So, now here's one of those chords like Bach used. They're called seventh chords. And the next one is there. And then he adds this other element. And these are all the same quality, and they're all what we call seventh chords, but instead of them going to the usual place, they just banter around each other a bit. And so you see that, and you learn it, and you start appreciating it because you say, oh, that's pretty. And then you start layering it, and you start phrasing it, and you do all kind of things. And then gradually you take music theory, and this is what Debussy was, this is what he's thinking. I know, and this is a trip inside Debussy's mind. I did this at 5 o'clock this morning, so what was in my mind? But anyway, so you have the opening chords. Here is it's an enharmonic B diminished chord. And this, the fourth note where Barbie's pointing right now, it's called an upper neighbor, not an uppity neighbor. Those might be next door to you in your humble dwelling, but an upper neighbor, because it's just... And here you get to what's called the dominant sevenths. You might even say because they're very dominant in music, but because usually that goes there. But that first pink chord you see is a seventh chord. And all those chords that you see in that first page that are pink are seventh chords. But he just says, well, why can't I go there? That's pretty too, so why not? So he changed the course of music, and then you get this little... And that set of pink chords right there are just those notes. The same notes that you heard as a chord are now spread out. And when you play them all at once, it's called a harmonic intervals. Those are, we call them chords usually, but those are harmonic, or these are melodic. But it's a different use of the plain old common kitchen sink seventh chord. So you put all that together and you get these. And then you get. And these are all seventh chord, seventh chord, seventh chord, seventh chord, seventh chord, different seventh chord. So he's meandering in a way, but it's so brilliant because he's a genius and because he understands good music and good composition, and he's making something of it. But where did this all come from? Up at the top, very top. And I can tell you it's layering, but I also can tell you that there's a pattern. And if there wasn't, or if there was not a pattern, you would be in deep trouble as a memorizing music, right? So we're looking for patterns. So I put little ziggy zaggies. Imagine that's a little dinosaur that has those little spines so they won't get eaten by the T-Rex guy. So there's their little spiny guys. And so they're up here. These are what are called half steps. This is the next black key, white key, black key, white key, black key, white key. And it's kind of hard to see, but look above that. There's a little orange highlight. And you can see it better at home, perhaps. So so these are called half steps. But this is a minor third. You heard it in, that's a major third, but we're in the key of D minor. Here's D major. Here's D minor. And my teacher used to, when I was 5 years old, she'd say, well, tell me which one sounds happy and tell me which one sounds sad. Happy, sad. Tell me which one seems bright and which one seems darker. Brighter, darker, D minor, D major, that kind of thing. So that's going on. D minor, A flat minor, kind of. There's D, and there's your D minor again, and that all takes you to there. And so that's how Debussy's creating organic unity. So you have a pattern. Little dino, dinosaur. Half step, little spiny. Half steps, minor thirds. And take us to this chord. And now let's try this one for color. And this one, piano or pianissimo, the name of our show. And here's kind of a brighter chord in a way because of how he used it, because he puts it in two hands. One hand, B flat majors or B flat 7. And usually that goes to there. But Debussy says, I can go back to that. So, and then he introduces, and if Barbie can point to that A flat major, A flat 7, and draw the line up to the chord above it. No, I mean the printing that I printed in above the staff, A flat 7. So that number 7, wherever you see a 7, it's one of those chords, maybe a different one. So I tell you the names. So let's do the second line. You see C sharp 7, B flat 7, C sharp 7, B flat 7, C sharp, B flat. Let's go somewhere else. And that's the A flat 7, B flat, C sharp, B flat, A flat, B flat, F sharp 7. And then F7, and we're in the last line. Now we're going down into the basement. That was totally unexpected. And then you get, I have to get myself positioned here. And this is also new, C sharp minor, but it's spread out all over the piano, and then it goes to this glorious B flat major. And you get the completion of the B flat major, and then you get it again, and this is the end of the line by itself. And then the next line is all, you don't need to know about this, but it's all tied, so it looks like you play it again, but you don't. You just hold it. And then you have this little playful B flat major. He's celebrating B flat major, all those circles with blue. And this is the actual, so at the end of the second line, at the top of the end of the second line, you see the F7, which does go to the B flat normally. So he does some normal things as well as unusual things. Does that make a little bit of sense? And it's genius at work because the third line of the second page now, the bottom of the second page, Barbie. Hello, did Barbie go to sleep? Vanna White. No, I'm Pat Sajak. And now he pivots off that F natural and these, see the little green ziggy-zaggies are all half steps. In a way, it makes it memorizable, but it also makes it beautiful because you have and if you can show where the contrary motion, the melody is going up, and the left hand is going down. It's like Newton's law all happening at once. Some of the apples are going up, and some of them are coming down, which was like Chopin. I've showed you that earlier with that place. I can't find it in my ear at the moment, but that. This is the last two measures. Here are the zigzags. And now you have the contrary motion. It's like your ear is pulled in two directions at once. And that creates, I'm sorry, they're both half-steppy. And then, and I could show you the next page. But you're sort of getting the idea that it's rich. It's very, not calculated. It's, you could say by the time Debussy wrote this in 1913, or for the 1913 set of the second book of preludes, and this is prelude number 7 from the second book, like Bach's preludes, 24 of them. Debussy wrote 24 preludes, but he did not write them in every key. That was not his purpose. And this idea later, very, very back to the beginning, so pointer a little. And you have this low C sharp. Barbie talked about it the first week. What piece was that in? You talked about the pedal points. I know, we all do. Okay, maybe it was. Oh, I think it was, yeah. Okay. Well, the idea of the pedal point is like an organist would just put their feet down on that low C sharp, so all this. And there in the second line is the chord in the right hand. And then he keeps that. Sorry. And there's another one. So that's sort of the glue that holds it all together. But guess what? That C sharp is hinting at the very end of the piece when 6 pages later, or in the 6th page, you're getting, and normally C sharp is the second most important note of the F sharp major scale. So that C sharp is anticipating the end of the piece, and you don't see it there, so I'm going to just go two frames ahead. We got 7 minutes, so if there's a little question here and there, we can take a look. But here, and Barbie can also point to it over there, you get that low C sharp says, as if you're reading a book, sometimes the last page says, the end, right? So that C sharp is setting you up subliminally. And I'm in the previous page at the top of it. And here's another contrary motion. It's kind of hard to do out of context. And here, there's the F sharp that's going to be the end. That whole C sharp on the first page is telling us that someday we're going to get to F sharp major. I have to find it. And here's those same, it sounds like a melody because there are melodic intervals of the G7 chord. And then this other mysterious, that harmony is so rich, it's like, so this, it's edgy, but it's gorgeous. It's all those notes spread out. And if you did it like that, it would just be Stravinsky maybe for a minute, but and I have to find it. Then now, this is so important musically because I didn't get time to look it up, or I didn't take time to look it up. But in French tradition, Italian tradition, German, Western music tradition, there was a time, and forever, you were not supposed to play what they called parallel fifths. So they would take this chord and they would and play the same notes but play them in a different order. So I'm at the plus long, right there, the first chord of the P major. So the bottom note is not the usual F sharp. And it's so beautiful. And the bottom note is not so-called the bass note. And what's significant is that it was the next level of harmony brought into the Catholic Church when the monks were allowed to make harmony, but they weren't allowed to go. They would change it up so that it was in a different set of notes, different order. The bottom note was actually the top note of the chord became the bottom note of the harmony. So here's my secret for this piece. So my thought is that Debussy would know that. And he would know that that was ancient harmony from the 9th or 10th century. So my idea a little bit, if this piece depicted anything of reality of the moon is forever old. And so when you hear in this piece, it's kind of like this is earth and this is heaven. Kind of that huge distance between the two. And this was allowed in Gregorian chant in the Catholic Church. So when you get to the very end of the piece, point to the last part, Barbie, if you're still awake. No, the end of the piece, next page. So those are not even the harmonies, like this. These are just open fifths. There's a chord, but there's. So what I think happens is that the moon sets, and what's left in the night after the moon sets, you see the stars. And then you're getting, but he just doesn't go F sharp major, F sharp major. He does this little edgy dinosaur spine, half step. And you don't hang the G into that, you let it go. And then the moon sets, something like that. And this is not meant to be a picture piece. Debussy, if you look at the title of the piece, the title comes at the end. He did not want people to say, oh, I'm painting a picture of the moon as seen from an audience in a balcony someplace, contemplating the eternity of things way back beyond us. But maybe it was, but it was a suggestion at the end. Sometimes he said, well, what does this piece sound like to you? And she said, well, it sounds like, oh, footsteps in the snow? Okay, footsteps in the snow, I'll call it that. So it wasn't like depiction. And impressionistic art already is not depicting. They say of impressionistic art, it evokes rather than depicts. So it's this useful thinking a little bit of how you can receive the music of Debussy and Ravel, and then what came after Bartók and Schoenberg and his transitions, and great composers that we won't get time. We need 6 more weeks to get into that area, but we have next week to summarize a little bit. I think I'm going to get to drag the gong show. This is where they have the little thing. Gong! Gong with the wind. Any quick last second thoughts? I hope it's not confusing in the sense that you don't have to know all this, but if you just feel something happening in music, it's just the greatest. I was so proud of the kids in the Pianissimo show. That's the best I ever heard. These 10 kids and 6 kids and 3 kids, and the kids were all ages up to 30 really. But Margaret Ott, my dear friend in Spokane, she said, I'm 90. Anyone younger than I am is a kid. Steven, that's why I still call you a kid. Anyway, okay, so next week, any last minute thought? Okay. Were you all right? See you next week. Thank you, Barbie. Yay.